There are a few things in any image editing program which people find hard to get their head around, and layer masks are one of them. But please, please, please try and stick with this. I'll show you an example of one in action, and I'll explain the principles behind it. And if you enroll on the course, you can download the photo from the course to work with, along with 24 more hours worth of really good tuition. Anyway, let's get started with this layer mask. Okay, so this image is redcaps.jpg, and if I just take a quick segment from the end of this video, this is what we're going to be ending up with. And if you take a look at the layers panel, we've got our original image, and then we have an adjustment layer with that thing just to the right of it, that little icon. That is the layer mask doing what the layer mask does. And it's affected the color of those toadstools, but it hasn't affected the rest of the layer. So how does that work? All right, well, let's come to our adjustment layers, and I'm going to come down to this one, the Hue Saturation Layer. Click on it. Bring it over to here. Now, can you see inside the layers panel? I have two icons here with a little link in between the two of them. That means that they're connected with each other. One moves, the other one moves. This icon here represents my Hue Saturation Layer. But that white square to the right of it, that is the layer mask thumbnail. And so now what I'll do is I'll come back to my Hue Saturation icon so I get my controls back and I can adjust the look of this picture. It's quite simple. You have your hue slider, and if you move it around like this, you can see all the colours of the picture change around. It's like you're cycling through the colours of the rainbow for every part of this picture. Now, supposing I wanted that colour for those toadstools, for example. Well, that's great, good. Okay, I've got that rather interesting blue for those toadstools, but the rest of the picture has been affected. I only want those red caps to be affected, and to do that, I use the layer mask. You can see I've just selected it. It is important that you select the layer mask. This is probably the #1 mistake that people do when they use layer masks. And you can see it is a white square because at the moment, that layer mask is just an invisible layer of white pixels that is sitting right on top of your photo. And wherever that white layer of pixels is white, means you can see all the parts of the layer it's affecting. This layer mask is attached to the Hue Saturation Adjustment Layer, so it's only going to affect that layer. And at the moment it's doing precisely nothing because it's all white. But let's come over to our paintbrush. Let's make our paintbrush just a little bit larger like this. Now what colours have we got? We've got kind of a grey foreground and a white background colour. I will press D. When you press D on your keyboard, that gives you the default colours for your foreground colour and your background colour. That's all very well, but instead of white as my foreground colour, I want black. Not a problem. Here's another keyboard shortcut for you. Press X. It swaps the foreground colour and the background colour around. Now, watch what happens when I paint with black. Make sure the layer mask is selected. You can tell because it's got that little white border around the icon. And then I'll double check, make sure my brush is set to normal mode. My opacity is 100%. Let's put flow on 100% as well. And now I will paint on my layer mask. What happened there? A layer mask is just a sheet of dark to light pixels which you can't see that lies directly on top of whichever layer the layer mask is affecting. In this case, it's our Hue Saturation Layer. And when I paint in black on the layer mask, that Hue Saturation Layer becomes invisible, which means you can see whatever is lying underneath the adjustment layer. Well, I'll do it again, look. Let's do it around here. Or let's make our brush size a little bit bigger and start painting out part of that background. And that is another thing that confuses people. People can never remember whether you're supposed to have black to make the layer invisible or white to make the layer invisible or whatever. Try and remember the phrase, black conceals, white reveals. So when I paint with my black paintbrush on this adjustment layer, I conceal that layer like this. But now, if I swap around my colours by pressing X or just coming to this tiny little arrow and just clicking there to swap the colours over, now I'm going to paint in white. And when I do paint in white, you can see white reveals the effects of the adjustment layer. Black conceals, white reveals. Another phrase is white gives light, black hole. Now you can remember black hole because there are black holes in space, but wherever you paint in black, it creates a hole in the adjustment layer or whatever layer has a layer mask attached to it. it makes it invisible. But here's the nice thing. Supposing I change my mind and I want to reveal the blue adjustment layer on this red cap. Well, swap over my colors on my keyboard. So now I'm painting in white. And I can paint that area again. If I press X to swap my colors over, I can conceal, swap again. So I'm painting with white and I reveal. I'll make my brush a little bit smaller and swap my colors by pressing X again. So I'm painting in black and I conceal, and so on and so forth. And that's the point. It's not like, say, you're painting on a canvas where if you keep on painting black and then white and then black and then white, you'll end up with a sludgy grey mess. This is digital painting. You can paint in black and then white and then black and then white as much as you want in any one particular area, which means you can conceal or reveal as much as you want. I'm going to show you something. I will come to my layer mask icon. You can tell it's selected. I've got these little white lines around it. I will hold down my Alt or Option key and I will click on it. Look at that. That is your layer mask made visible, and you can see the marks I've made on it. It's just a black and white layer, which I've painted black or white pixels onto, and its job is not to be seen like we're seeing it now. Its job is simply just to sit quietly over the layer we are affecting and make it visible or invisible. Now, here's another little gotcha. You'll notice that I've now selected my Hue Saturation Layer and not the layer mask. And when I do that, do you notice how the colors have changed? They're no longer black and white, because if I click on the layer mask again, you get a specialized color palette, because really with a layer mask, you can only paint in black or white or gray. And Photoshop knows this, and so it will change your color palette around like this. On that score, I will swap to white again, and I'll paint so all of this particular mushroom is completely affected by the adjustment layer. But now what I will do is, and then I'll swap. So now this toadstool is completely unaffected by the adjustment layer. So I've got one completely unaffected and it's red, and one completely affected and it's completely blue. Now I'm going to take the color I'm painting with, and instead of painting with black, I'm going to paint about a mid-gray. And if I paint now, can you see that toadstool is now 50% the adjustment layer and 50% the underlying background layer? And the point I'm making here is not only can you conceal or reveal, but by painting in grey, in this case 50% grey, you can partially reveal what is underneath. And in this case, it's 50% revealed. And if that's not enough power for you, I will press Command+Z to get rid of that. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger like this, and I'm going to take my opacity down to about, should we say, 10%. So now my brush opacity is on 10%. I will set my colors so they are black and white. I will swap them around. So now I'm painting in black at 10%. Can you see how I'm making repeated brush strokes and I'm gradually hiding the adjustment layer and revealing the layer underneath, so I get this graduated effect like this. If I come again to my layer mask and press Alt and click on it, those are the brush strokes I made. You can see how they're darker down one corner like this and less intense in the areas where I've made less brush strokes. And if I click on my Hue Saturation Layer thumbnail again, you can see that area where I've painted low opacity brush strokes has been gradually revealed, and you get this soft transition between the red and the blue. That is a serious amount of power. Remember, it's just painting in black and white. That's all it is. So here's the final thing. I did say I wanted only those blue caps affected and the rest of the picture not. Well, I can go back to my layer mask and try to make all of the background layer visible by painting out all of the surrounding area apart from those two red caps, but that's a bit of a long-winded way of doing things. So I'll show you a couple of new things. One is if I make sure my layer mask is selected and I come to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. When I do that, the dark will become light, the light will become dark, and everything gets inverted. But you can already see I've created a little bit of a mess with this. So what I will do is I will come down to my Layers panel, I will make sure my layer mask thumbnail is selected, and come down to my trash can icon I get a little message saying, do you want to delete the layer mask? I say, yes, I do. So now I've just got my hue saturation layer there. Adding a layer mask to any layer is very, very easy. You just come down to this icon here, add layer mask. Click, and there it is, and I'm ready to go again. And if you notice when I clicked, it came in as white. But what I'll do is I'll delete it. Yes, I want to get rid of it. Make sure my hue saturation layer is selected again. It is because of that little white outline. And now I will come down and create a layer mask, but instead of just clicking, I will hold down my Alt or Option key and then click with my left mouse button. That creates an inverted layer mask. So instead of it being white, it's now black, which means that entire hue saturation layer is invisible. Oh, good. I will zoom in a little bit for this. Let's work on this one here. Get my paintbrush. It's a little bit large. I will make it a little bit smaller. It's 100% opacity. Now, what is it? Black conceals, white reveals. I want to reveal my hue saturation adjustment layer, so I will need white. At the moment, black is selected, so I will press X and start painting away like this. The edges of that brush are a little bit blurry, so I will come up to my brush controls. I will change the hardness to what, say about 60%. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's giving me a crisper edge, and I will do this, and I'll come down, and I'll do this, and oh dear, I made a mistake. I went over. I completely leapt over the border between the red and that background. Not a problem. Press X and come back in and paint out the offending area. Press X to swap my colours again, and I am good to go like this. I'm going to work quite fast with this because, well, I've already explained the principles. And so I'll fade out and fade back in again once I've coloured the other mushroom. Okay, we're back, and I'm just putting the finishing touches to this, and Command+0 to zoom to fit. There are my mushrooms, that nice shade of blue. And if I hold Option or Alt and click on my layer mask, there's the layer mask. Oh, and I can see I've just missed a tiny little bit there. That's better. And then if I click back on my actual layer thumbnail rather than the layer mask thumbnail, there we are. And okay, supposing I've decided on reflection that I'm not too keen on that particular colour, not a problem, just come and click, open up my hue saturation dialog box again, and well, what colour do you want? Any colour you like. Saturation, certainly, that's nice. Lightness, whatever you want. So those are layer masks. Initially they can be confusing. I strongly recommend you stick with them. And if you do enroll on the course, you will see me use layer masks again and again and again. They are a fundamental skill when it comes to using Photoshop. So if you enjoyed this video, there's over 24 more hours just like it on the course. Click on the link below to enroll now. And if you click the subscribe button, I'll be loading some more videos onto this channel. So I will see you soon.